The US has said Iran's nuclear program was severely damaged, yet 400 kg enriched uranium may have been hidden before more strikes hit key sites. Fordow, Natanz, Isfahan. The CIA confirms facilities destroyed. Rebuilding could take years, but Iran's advanced centrifuges remain a concern for global security experts. Tehran, however, denies weapon ambitions and claims uranium was moved early. The IAEA also demands access to verify stockpiles and infrastructure status. US President Donald Trump credits strikes for halting the war and hints at diplomacy with Iran, with next week's talks seeking to end Iran's enrichment. Israel says strikes delayed Iran's nuclear weapons path by years, but Iran vows to continue nuclear activity undeterred. Meanwhile, Iranians and Israelis return to normalcy, exhausted but unsure if true peace or more tension lies ahead. US intelligence still can't trace relocated uranium. Fears grow over possible secret stockpiles and future enrichment. The IAEA's Grossi calls for long-term strategy over short-term assessments, stressing cooperation and inspection urgency. Trump has also ruled out regime change, but warns against Iran of rebuilding a nuclear program, promising military action if it resumes. Iranian President Pezeshkian sees crisis as a chance for reform, while executions and arrests show the regime's tightened grip. We're now joined by our guest, Shruti Das Gupta, an international affairs expert located in New Delhi. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us on the program. I want to get on to fears that the US hasn't, in fact, quote, obliterated Iran's nuclear program and the possibilities that Iran may have moved crucial nuclear elements somewhere else, an unknown location. Does this risk an underground nuclear program, not regulated, not inspected? What are your thoughts on this?
From New Delhi, and my concerns are very valid, as you've just stated, that the enriched uranium was moved. It was moved, if I look at it, for many reasons. One, because its location was known. So if a strike on that happened via Israeli bombs, it would have led to a nuclear radiation leak and chemical poisoning of the land. So Iran's move to hide it was a way of survival as well. But beyond that, the minute it was moved during the war scenario that happened, the 12-day war scenario that happened, it also led to the fact that IAEA no longer has visibility of that material. So nobody in the world knows what is Iran doing with it now. Now, if I go beyond just the material itself, I would like to say that Iran has plans, okay? It has nuclear enrichment plans, it has techniques, it has know-hows, it has blueprints of weapons. Since 1979, US has been trying to limit the missile capability of Iran through various sanctions, independent sanctions, and they were unable to do so till date, right? So as a result, we found that Iran has the know-how, it has the technology to ensure that if it does empower a weapon, it can be lethal to the rest of humanity. Beyond this, so Iran has the capability, but as of now, we know that a lot of its top nuclear scientists were neutralized by Israel during these 12 days. Also, its facilities were hit. Now, these facilities were hit by bunker busters. So as a result, even though you cannot see like a full-on blast of sorts over the ground, they went inside and did enough damage that the facility can no longer be safely used. So the concerns of CIA may be misrepresented when they are said that the facilities exist. Of course, the facilities exist, but they may not be completely usable. So I'm hedging my best towards that Iran can, as of now, not do something big, but it has the capability and technical know-how if it is given a chance to restart the program.
Shruti, I just wanted to reiterate to our viewers that these reports of the movement of uranium have not been confirmed specifically. There are fears, there are these images that we see of these trucks leaving, in particular the Fordo base prior to the strikes. However, these haven't been confirmed. I also want to talk about regime change. That was a big topic for Netanyahu. Donald Trump reportedly vetoed a plan to kill the Ayatollah Khomeini earlier on in the war. How do you see this regime moving forward? Iran have said that the regime will be stronger coming out of this crisis. What are your thoughts on the future of the Iranian regime?
Well, the Iranian regime is very fragile right now. They have executed they've arrested 20 people on suspicions of assisting Israel and Mossad. Their own nationals, by the way, not Israeli nationals. And they've executed, if I know correctly, 3 plus 3, so a total of 6 people in the last few hours itself on suspicion of assisting Israel during these 12 days of war. So the regime is trying to stifle dissent, which might come in any form via protests or others. And we know that it is not a very popular regime. It was, at least before these 12 days, it wasn't popular because of its very restrictive religious restrictions that it had placed. And we know that at least 50% of its mosques were empty. People were not willing to listen to these imams pontificate on religious diktats that were no longer viable in the modern world. So, and 70% of people were not happy with the kind of lives that they were living under that regime. Of course, there is still, now with the war with Israel, there has been a renewed support for the regime. And this ceasefire may help the regime come back on its feet, while staying favorable to these people who now find their nationalism being questioned. So they might find feet again. But the regime change that both US and Israel were flirting with, where they were probably trying to prop up the descendant of Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. And they were probably looking to see if that man found popularity. But putting somebody from outside would be bad optics. So I think, in my analysis, they would probably wait for a people-powered movement to make sure that the change comes from the ground itself, and the people, whoever Israel or US put their stamp of approval on, also have the stamp of approval of the local elites. So I'm pretty sure as of now, the regime change is only in Israel's mind. America knows you cannot force a nation to accept a new leader just because US says so. So as of now, I don't think US has it, but it is a long-term plan of Israel, because until and unless the regime change happens, and mind you, this current regime is a regime that hates, I'm using that word very, very specifically, hates the Israeli regime. Okay, they do not like its existence in Middle East. Sure. And so I find it that Israel will continue its effort to try and ensure that a regime change happens there.
Shruti, one final point. Diplomacy is on Trump's mind once again, and he's hinted at talks next week with Iran in regards to their nuclear program. What leverage does the US now have? Sanctions, military threat, or actual compromise, do you think, is coming here?
Well, the JCPOA was unilaterally negated by US, but the others of the P5+1 that were there, they still continued to operate under that JCPOA. And when in 2020, US tried to reiterate sanctions on on Iran, they the others did not agree with them. They did not want to be part of a set of new sanctions on Iran. So now with this war, from what I understand, even President Macron wants everybody on the table of diplomacy, have new nuclear restrictions placed on Iran, and they want it to happen before October of this year, 2025, because on October of 2025, the JCPOA's restrictions on enrichment and its usage of Fordo and other facilities and reconstruction of those facilities will become legalized. As of now, it was an illegal plan that was working. They were not allowed to use Fordo. Only Natanz centrifuge, and which was of older capability, was allowed, and only up to 3% of enrichment. So obviously there have been a lot of red lines crossed by Iran, and everybody wants to get them back on the table, because as I've stated earlier, they have the know-how, they have the technology, they have the strategy to develop into a nuclear power. And this is a fear that the West has. Once it does gain nuclear power, Iran will be uncontrollable. So it is something for the people in the movers and shakers of the powers of corridors to go forth and ensure that Iran is again brought to the table and made to sign on a deal and follow the letter of that deal. We found that it signs a deal, but it doesn't kind of obey it completely. So it's an iffy position right now.
Shruti, thank you very much for